All right, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast 50. This is like a memorial or something. It's awesome. Getting deep into the seasons. We are into coming up with the Super Bowl. So through the playoffs, conference championships. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Of course, we got Big Box Steve on the mic and the Big Smooth. If you're watching, please subscribe. I know we had more viewers than subscribers. So you guys watched, you didn't subscribe. So please subscribe. Of course, if you're listening on podcasts, whether it be Anchor or Spotify or Apple, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Any comments, questions, please leave them in the comments. And appreciate you guys watching. So we're not going to get into Super Bowl yet. Well, you guys will see that in our next podcast. So stay tuned. But we do want to kind of just wrap through the playoffs, talk about the conference championships, and then we'll hit a couple other key NFL things happening out there. So the first thing I want to talk about before we get into anything is conference championship games. I want to start with Philly for a second. And I know you guys picked Philly and I picked San Francisco. Um, I probably thought Philly would win, but I really hoped for my sister at San Francisco to win. They didn't really care who won the game. But looking at Philadelphia just for a second, they've outscored their opponents 69-14 now in their two playoff games. Like, what does that say for Philly? Um, Talk about the domination in the San Francisco game. Like, what do you think there?
Well, it's tough because if you look at the teams they played the Giants, who overachieved big time this year. They're not as talented as most teams that made the playoffs, and talent just won out on that one. And then with the 49ers, I mean, Purdy gets hurt really early. Uh, Johnson just shouldn't have even been in there anyway. He was horrible. And then he gets hurt. And so Purdy has to come back in, who's now going to be out for 6 months at least.
Right. I mean, you can't throw the ball.
No, and I mean they had nobody else. They were going to have to go with McCaffrey, which they should have done
Yeah.
because nothing. But by the time that Johnson got hurt again, the game was already over. Um, it was pretty close early on, but I think the Eagles just wore them down, and they
Well,
did.
so when Johnson fumbles there right before the end of the half, though, because it's 7-14 right there, right?
Right,
If if they even drive down and get a field goal there, which they had a first good play, they were already on like the 40 or whatever,
right,
and then he fumbles, and now it goes 21-7. And even if you finish 14-7 there, like you're still in the game.
right. They shouldn't even. They should have been super conservative
Run the
and
ball, right? Why not run the
Johnson.
ball, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because you still had a lot of time. You have timeouts. So I kind of mentioned this in when we were texting was the play calling there. I think was horrible.
I I don't know why, like all the talking heads, all the sports players or sports stations just love Shanahan. He's not that great.
Right.
I mean, he's good, but what did he do with Atlanta, right? He lost that Super Bowl with his play calling, right? I mean, 20 up 21 and he didn't run the ball at all. He's the play caller. And then they always talk, oh, he can put any quarterback in his system, and then but still, that team is one of the most talented teams there is, and it's not winning Super Bowls.
Right.
I think he gets way too much credit.
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of showed in this game. I think this game really highlights what you're talking about when you say because we're sitting here at home, and obviously it's a lot easier to talk about it at home. But think about when Purdy gets hurt, right? What's the first thing you're going to do? You should be running easy plays, number one, for Johnson to call. So what do they get? They get multiple delay of games. Why? Because you're calling, 8 title plays, right? You're calling X out, 6 cross, 4, all these things when you could say, hey, halfback off tackle, run the play. And even if you get 2 to 3 yards each play, now you're putting them in a 3rd and 3.
Right.
Instead of a 3rd and 15 because you've taken 2 delay of games because you call complicated plays instead of just saying McCaffrey off tackle, McCaffrey off tackle. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's why the play calling for me, if I'm bringing in a quarterback that hasn't played in the championship game, you got to get him comfortable in the game. The easiest way to get him comfortable is call easy plays for him to run and to let McCaffrey run the ball, right? Oh,
it is. Oh, there we're back. You're
yeah,
frozen a little bit.
yeah. So back.
Yeah, you're back.
All right. I don't know
Getting
where
back.
we froze, but what I'm saying is that you got to put easy plays in, right? You got to let McCaffrey run the ball for a couple yards each time, so you put your quarterback in 3rd and short at worst.
Well, especially you have Kittle, you have Debo Samuel. You can also run really short routes.
Right.
What they should have
Wide
done
receiver
is gone with,
screens.
yeah, they should have gone with the game plan they did against the Packers, right? Play controllable and then let your defense win you a game.
Right. Yeah,
So
but I'm not putting him in there and again running these complicated plays because how hard is the play call for Christian McCaffrey off tackle?
right,
That's not a difficult play call, right? What's that called? That's called like 25 dive, you know,
right.
versus like 7 routes you're trying to put into the play call. And I think that hurt them because each time they did that, they ended up taking a delay a game, and now you're in 2nd and 15.
Right. When you don't want that.
Right? Not with a quarterback who has no experience and play a field position game.
Mhm.
Because if you don't take any sacks and you don't take any negative plays and you're at the 50, even if you run 3 times for 2 yards, now you're punting inside their own, 10 or whatever. So play calling for me, even if my quarterback gets hurt, that's when I think play calling makes the most. That changes the game. You have to be smart at that point, and I don't think they were.
No.
Yeah. Uh, I also don't think that I definitely they didn't get a lot of calls that went their way, and that's tough. One of the things that you mentioned, which I think is totally legitimate, when you said they played undisciplined. When you watch most of the undisciplined plays, though, they came after like calls that go against them, and that happens to athletes, right? It happens to you when you're in the game and it's like everything keeps going against you, and then you make a stupid decision, right? You make a
Right.
stupid play.
Yeah, but
And
some of them are like, false starts and stuff like that. It's like, come on,
well,
dude.
delay of games and false starts, where
Yeah.
I think some of that does have to do with the coaches, right? You got to put your players in better positions.
Yeah, if was it that game where the punter hit the wire and they're just like,
Right. Well,
well
they
then,
because there wasn't any video of it, so they
right,
said it hit the wire, and you can't see a video of it. So I get that, but that was Philadelphia though. That wasn't San
right.
Francisco.
Yeah, I know that
Um,
Philadelphia got a call against them there.
right,
I just think that the overall theme of this weekend was they need to have full-time refs who can be held accountable. This part-time stuff in the NFL is just ridiculous. And
right,
the both games was ruined by the refs.
Yeah, I think obviously more the second game than the first. But what I don't think that a lot of people see, and obviously as player people, play football, watch football a lot, we see it differently than the average fan. Dude, Lane Johnson false started at least 3 times trying to
Mhm.
get in front of Nick Bosa,
Yeah.
and it never got called, and that's super frustrating to me. And I don't even care. Like, I don't like either of these teams. I'm not sitting there saying I hope one of these teams wins, but this dude is literally going before the ball goes to get ahead of Nick Bosa. And I'm like, and then they call false starts and all these other penalties on there. I'm like, you gotta call it evenly.
Well, that's a weird thing. It seems like it's just this year that we've seen tons of those
Right.
in games where it's like, I didn't see that last year. It's like they are like, oh, okay, you can start early or something. I don't know what's going on. It
Yeah.
seems very weird that the tackles have gotten more leeway.
They are starting before the ball's high. They're
Right.
and I've seen it in multiple games, and the only reason I call this out is because it was so obvious, and it
Right.
was multiple times for Lane Johnson doing that. And then the lining up off sides drives me crazy.
Yeah.
These guys are literally, and Nick Bosa is just as guilty of that as anybody. So now you got a defensive lineman lining up off sides. You got a tackle false starting. So maybe it washes, but at the same
Oh,
time,
yeah.
it just drives me crazy.
Maybe that's the carry, how the NBA doesn't call carries anymore. So maybe
Right.
that's what they're doing here.
Right. Yeah, because you can hand check and foul, so why not let him carry, right?
Yeah.
But so yeah, but regardless, when we talk about that game, San Francisco's defense didn't play like they normally play, so that hurt them.
Right.
Turnovers hurt them. So even with the calls, I think there was definitely some calls that the refs missed or called when they shouldn't
Yeah.
have called.
I don't think that one, it didn't really affect the outcome, I don't think.
Well, just because Purdy gets hurt, their offense struggled. Josh Johnson, which I don't, he does get hurt, which still kind of hurts you. Um, I at that point, why not just run the Wildcat, right?
Right.
Because at least you have a player, an extra player at that point.
Right.
Because Purdy at that point he's just a nothing player because he
Yeah.
can't throw the ball. So that was a little weird to me. I would have thought that they would have done that. But overall, I think Philly played a good game. Their defense played great. They got tons of pressure on the ball, which they've done all year. Um, so yeah, so definitely deserve to be there. Like, you can't argue with Philly in the Super Bowl at this
Right.
point. So let's jump over to the Chiefs Bengals game, because this is I don't think I've ever seen this much dispute in social media and even regular media talk about a game as much
Right.
as I've seen about this one.
Yeah. It was pretty ridiculous.
So give me your thoughts on
Oh gosh. I was so mad. First off, I guess, yeah, this one I had more invested in because I hate the Chiefs and I
it.
didn't want to see them in the Super Bowl again. But I was just so mad at so many of the blatant calls that were just like ridiculous. And I get the whole Mahomes getting hit out of bounds. That was a stupid play. But the 3 holds by the Chiefs before that
Well, on
none
the
of them
same
got
play,
called.
like
Yeah,
on the
on the
play,
same play.
yeah, right.
And that's where it's like, how many times do people have to be held by a Chiefs player and not get it called? It's ridiculous. And then everyone's like, oh, Mahomes is so great at getting out of stuff. That's because people are getting tackled.
I think the sad part about that play to me was everybody's, because you have to call the hit out of bounds because it's
Right.
obviously a hit out of bounds, right? But that's the sad part, is that when he moves up inside the tackle, you can see two holds right there, right?
Hmm.
And one's like a tackle. It's not even a hold. He like turns him sideways and takes
Right.
him down. And the other is it's a hold to a second hold when he tries to move with Mahomes and he still has him. So the problem I have with that is, and we've talked how many times we said there's holding on every play.
Yes.
We know that, right?
But
But
these
when
are
it's
blatant holds.
but when it's around the ball, that's different to me. I could see you not calling a hold or missing a hold that's away from the ball. If it's way over here, the action's over here, there's almost no reason to call it, but also you're not looking at it.
Right.
But when the guy that has the ball is running and there's a hold right next to him, two holds right next to him, that's hard to miss.
Right. And then the other one that is the big topic was, so they call the personal foul, which was a personal foul. I'm not going to say that wasn't. But what, 8 plays earlier, Joe Burrow's in the pocket
Right. And they hit
and
him. Right.
Frank Clark takes 3 steps after the ball was released and hits him.
Right. And
Where in the right
no
mind has
personal
that
foul.
not been called? That's
Oh,
always called.
think about the roughing the passer that we've seen all year. Like the most ridiculous, like small takedowns, and they're like roughing the passer.
Right.
And
And this
now
was
you can take 3 steps and knock him down and not get a roughing the passer. When Brady is tackled, on a normal tackle while he still has the ball in his hand and not throwing down, not driven on top, like just taken softly down to the ground and gets a roughing the passer,
yeah.
and you
Who
miss
knows?
that.
You know why? It was an arrowhead, and that's where all the controversy started, right?
Right.
So they were
So
like, we're not going to call any roughing the passer penalties here.
so there was two issues that I take more than all of that with this game. And I'll get it out there. I wanted the Bengals to win. So it doesn't make me biased to point out these actual things. So they call it illegal hands to the face when uh the offensive lineman is holding him. So yes, the defensive lineman has hands to the face, but the offensive lineman is holding him. That's offsetting penalties. And that kept their drive alive. It gave them automatic first down with the illegal hands to the
Oh,
face.
what do you think? The Chiefs get extra plays, huh?
Yeah. But the extra play thing didn't matter. This one mattered
Yeah.
because it gave them a first down on the hands of the face when it should have been third and long on offsetting penalties. And so that one was a problem for me. The other one was on that kick return right at the end of the game that got them in great field position. There's an obvious block in the back where he runs up and gets his 24-yard return. They're literally blocked the guy in the back, and you see that. That's at the point of the ball. Like you can't miss those kind of things.
And then, it comes back to the Commanders game we talked about, where if you're gonna play like it's the last few minutes of the game and everything, don't play and you're gonna play loose on something but tight on it. No, you either got to be consistent one way or the other.
Right. Yeah,
And
well, I
that's
mean, that's like how you ref a basketball game, right? You call it the same way. You're going to play loose or you're going to play tight.
yeah. And that's you can't and that's where the whole thing of, can referees, now that where there's gambling out there, can they fix a game?
Can they impact the game? And they do, which has obviously been a problem for multiple sports with gambling problems.
Yeah.
But let's just talk about for a second. Can the NFL impact that? Like, can the NFL impact those referees? So that here's the hard part of the whole thing. I don't know if you've seen this, but I mean, there's guys like Arian Foster, Larry Johnson, all kinds of ex NFL players are coming out. Are they doing it for views? Are they doing it for, media? But they're saying, hey, that there's scripts going on here. Like they were told things were happening. That's the problem I have. It's like, because do you believe that? Like, do you believe when Arian Foster comes out and says, yeah, NFL scripted?
It's just because we played football, it's just so hard to think of, okay, now you're going to tear your ACL or you're going to break your, you know what I mean? And that's
Right.
going to impact the whole game. And then like how hard it would be to be like, okay, you're going to throw a 60-yard pass and Justin Jefferson, you're going to catch it with one hand. It's hard to fathom how it can. I wouldn't put it past the NFL, but I don't know how they could do it.
Right. Yeah, it's a question of logistics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because
I don't
if
know.
you think about like WWE, WWF for the older folks, it's like it's easier to script me and you in a ring together.
Right.
It's harder to script, 22 players on a field or 4 quarters of a game every play. But it's not hard, though, in my opinion, to uh, influence refs to call certain things and not call certain things.
Right. Yeah, because I was the other way. Do you think Derek Carr looked at a script and said, "Oh yeah, great, I'm going to get
Yeah.
scapegoated out of the Raiders," and it's just like I'm
Yeah.
going to have a
Yeah.
horrible career here in Oak, with the Raiders.
Or,
Yeah,
or
that's
Russell
great.
Wilson to be like, hey, I'm an MVP Super Bowl
Right.
winner, and now I'm going to go be trash in
Yeah,
Denver.
exactly.
I
These
mean,
people have way
that's a
too big
tough
of
pill to swallow.
egos. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also don't think it's above it to have these little calls that change games.
Yeah.
That
Or
that's the issue I have.
one last one would be like, oh, Brady playing like trash in his last NFL game ever.
Right.
Right. If it was
Yeah.
scripted, they would have had the Buck still they'd have him in the
Right.
Super
Go to the Super Bowl, win, but then he wouldn't retire though. And I think they're like, well, if we give Brady the championship, the dude's going to keep playing.
Bowl.
we got to get him out of here, otherwise nobody's ever going to break his record.
Now they're setting up Mahomes, right?
Right, exactly. They're like, we got to get somebody else up on here. Um, so I do have an issue with that. There's so many calls, there's so many things you look at, and you're like, this can't be real, right? This, like, you can't miss that. It can't happen this way, but it does.
Well, the big thing I see is the NFL is like $1 billion company and they rely on part-time referees.
Yeah,
I mean, these people do this and then they have to still have another job. So they have to go and start paying these guys full-time employees.
right.
Then they got to let the media and everyone critique them. None of this where it's like we're going to protect them from all things. And that's what irritates me the most is like these referees and stuff going to make all these calls, but they don't have to hear, nothing happens to them.
So yeah, and so let's talk about that for a second. So I mean I do believe that there's an argument for, you know, contracted referees at a higher salary, right? That are constantly doing the work. This is their only job. But then what comes with that is you got to do the job right?
Right. Exactly.
Right. And then on top of that, I actually really like the idea of this instant replay reviews while it's happening, where they come down from the
Mhm.
box from New York and say, "Hey, stop. We saw something and we need to tell you about it."
Well, that was in the Bengals Chiefs games, right? Where forgot who it was for the Bengals caught the pass, but it wasn't really a catch.
Right.
But they hurried and got to the line. That should have been something that New York. None of the they should stop with all the coaches challenges,
Yeah. Well,
and
that's what
they
I'm
should,
saying. Yeah, they should come from, they call it New York, but it should come from the box, right?
yeah,
You've got enough people and enough video where within seconds that you could say, "Hey, stop for a second. We need to review this."
right. And
Or
then
like
that,
the Devonta Smith catch in the San Francisco game. That's a huge
that
play
was the game. Yeah,
on fourth down at the
that's
beginning
the
of the
one I was
game.
thinking of. It was
Right,
that.
right. So
Yes,
if Devonta Smith, they don't call that a catch. Now the 49ers get the ball on the 45, going the other way, 0-0.
right.
That changes that whole game. And
Well,
we
that's
know
on
now it wasn't a catch.
right. Well, that's on also Shanahan. He's got to throw that challenge flag. He threw it on everything else.
Right. But you can't they Philly rush to the line, they go and catch. You have no video of it, you have no time. But the guys at the box, they do. Like New York, they don't care about the next play call. They don't care about what their defense is for the next goal line stand. They saw that play. That's all they know.
Well, if I'm seeing the other team rushing to the line to get a
Right.
playoff, I'm throwing that challenge flag.
Yeah. I'm I am in 100% agreement. Like I would have thrown the challenge flag in a heartbeat because it's just a timeout, but it's also one of your two challenges early in the game.
Right.
So
Yeah, but he
maybe,
lost it by the third quarter anyway.
yeah, but maybe like let's not limit their challenges if we're not going
Right.
to give the box the chance to stop the game
That's
because
true.
that changed that whole game.
Well, I don't like the. I thought it was before. If you challenged and you're right, you got to keep it. But now it's only you get only two, which is
No,
stupid.
you get three. So if you challenge and you get to keep it, but you can only get three total.
That's just dumb. If the refs keep making bad
Right.
calls, you should
It
be
should
able
be
to keep
it should be
challenging.
unlimited, right? It should be
Yeah.
unlimited. But I would rather get rid of coaches' challenges and have a team in the box, an unbiased team that could challenge every play anytime.
Right.
Because they see it live and they're just like, roll it, just keep going. But if they
Well,
see something,
especially,
they're like, stop the play.
well, you know what? Maybe just at least for the playoffs.
Right. When it gets, yeah, when every play can be, the difference between going home or not.
Right.
So I do have that issue, but regardless of and the ref, this is the first time I think the of any game I've seen all year, the Bengals Chiefs game would be the first game that I said I see something wrong with the NFL and with the refs because it looks so bad. It does look really bad when you look at
I don't
all
know.
the
The Raiders Chiefs game was really bad too.
yeah,
I mean, calling a penalty that hasn't been called in 5 years.
right. Oh yeah, that was
Crosby
oh yeah, the yeah, that was really bad.
and then Crosby getting held on that one
Right.
block. Yeah.
But there, I
Yeah.
mean,
Interesting. Both at Arrowhead.
well, so now let's get into this. Where's the Super Bowl in Arizona? What's Arizona's stadium called? State Farm Stadium.
Oh,
Patrick Mahomes, State
yeah.
Farm. Um,
Uh-oh.
and then I hate to get into this, but now we have the first two black quarterbacks ever starting in a Super Bowl, right? And now you have two
Brothers.
brothers facing in the Super Bowl. So those little things they add up.
Right.
And that's a tough thing to swallow for some people.
I still would like the script to have been Bengals 49ers part three, but
Right. Yeah,
I
but then you'd
thought,
have two white quarterbacks
yeah.
facing off, and you can't have
Well,
that.
not really, because Purdy's hurt would be out.
Right.
It'll probably be Johnson.
Well, they didn't plan on that happening,
Yeah.
and then he got hurt. Uh, so I mean, those because I like a good conspiracy, but I like it when it makes sense,
Right.
and it's hard to wrap my mind around some of these ones. But I think the hardest part for me is being a football player and watching football all my life. Some of the calls and some of the missed calls, especially in the Chiefs Bengals game, it's hard to swallow.
Yeah. And that's where it's more, instead of like scripted, more about you need to start looking at these refs' bank accounts and seeing what's going on.
Right. Yeah, or just maybe we need to be challenging refs' calls
Yeah.
instead of being challenged plays. Like, why can't I challenge? Because remember when they did that, they had that for a while. The pass interference challenging.
Right.
They started to do that, and I thought that was a good idea because how many times does a wide receiver go out and like push off and you know pass interfere with the defender and then get the catch and nothing's called, but then a defender like bumps him inside of 5 yards and still gets a pass interference. Like
Well, yeah.
in
What
the
was their?
Chiefs,
Yeah,
who was
the
it? It was
Bengals player.
yeah, Bengals. It was I can't remember his name, but yeah, that was a crazy call to me. I was like, he's inside of 5 yards.
Was it Hinton or Hilton? I think
Yeah,
it
it might have
wasn't
been
Apple.
Hilton. No, I think it
Yeah.
was. I think it was Hilton because
Yeah.
it was the nickel. Yeah, it was because it was a slot receiver. And I was
Mhm.
like, you're inside of 5 yards. Like you should be able to do that.
Right.
So, and that happened in the San Francisco game too, to Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward on AJ Brown inside
Right.
of 5 yards. And they call it pass interference. I'm like, it's not pass interference inside 5 yards. So I mean, that's the NFL though, trying to promote passing. Like they want it to be a passing
Yeah.
game. They want it to be a scoring game. That's where fans come from, and that's where you get more ratings. But for me as a defensive player, like I hate that.
Yeah. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. So that was tough. Um, so yeah, so now we got Chiefs, Philadelphia, and all of that is separate. I think you do have the two best teams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to argue. I think the Bengals are a good argument for as good as the Chiefs, but in the NFC, I really don't think anybody was better than the Eagles.
No, I think the 49ers were close, but that was it. Those two teams were the only teams I thought had a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, you could have had Buffalo, you could have had Cincinnati, you could have had the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's really I don't think it's really like a you can't say it's scripted to get the Chiefs in there because they're one of the best teams.
Right.
I mean, I think that the Eagles, the way they played all year, earned it. Defense played great. So at that point, it kind of is what it is. I really wish that the refing was better and we just got to see good games. That was a little disappointing.
Yeah. I don't like it to be where we talk about the refs.
Right. I hate that. I hate talking about like the refs aside the game because it makes you sound like a hater. Like it makes you sound like you're saying it because your team lost.
Right.
And that's not the case, especially in the Bengals Chiefs game. You know, you could there's definitely arguments in the 49ers Eagles games, but there's still the 49ers didn't play well.
Right.
Even if the refs called a perfect game, they probably would have lost.
Although I will say Burrow had some horrendous passes that were just like, what are you doing?
Right, right.
Throwing it up at
And
like,
and they didn't run the ball like they should have. You know, you got Mixon, you got a Chiefs defense who's not great at run defense, and so I think there's some mistakes there for sure. Um, So ultimately, the Bengals could have won the game regardless of the ref.
Right.
So so I want to talk about this for a second as we move forward. I'll talk about Brian Flores and the Dolphins. I don't know if you've seen this, but this has come up a lot. So Dolphins finished 9-8, which they also finished last year 9-8. Brian Flores gets fired. You bring in Mike McDaniel. You bring in Tyreek Hill. Tua's playing better. You bring in Bradley Chubb. You bolster your offensive line, but yet you still fire Brian Flores. You know,
I was talking, hey, we'll go back to the podcasts. I talked about this. I said it was ridiculous to fire Brian Flores before what was going on. He's a really good coach, and he to I think they fired him because I'm not going to go where everyone wants to go, but he wanted Herbert, and the front office wanted Tua,
right?
and so that's where their divide came. Obviously, Flores knows better than the front office.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'd rather have Herbert for sure.
Yeah.
So the question though, with that, I'm not. I don't think it's because everybody wants to call it a racist thing, and I don't think that's the case. Obviously, you're talking about difference in strategy, but is there? I mean, and I feel like there was more of a leeway years ago of coaches. Like, have they cut that leeway away? Do we need to have a longer leeway for some of these coaches, like a Brian Flores? Like, shouldn't he get another few years? Are
Well,
they
the whole
firing
other
him too
part
quickly?
was with Flores is he basically was Lovey Smith because the whole they talked about the owner wanted to tank and Flores wanted to tank.
Right,
And that's what Lovey Smith did. He won his last game so they could get the number
right,
one pick because he knew he wasn't coming back. Um, I think in all honesty, I mean, McDaniel had like a messed up season dealing with Tua, right?
right. So
It
two
was a tale
obviously
of
was
two
hurt.
teams. When Tua was healthy, they were one of the best teams in the NFL, right?
Well,
And
yeah, at
then
one point they were. Yeah, they were top five team record wise.
and they made the playoffs with Skylar Thompson starting at quarterback.
Yeah.
So and they made it close against the Bills. I like McDaniel. I like Flores though too. But
But
it's hard.
the question is, do you feel like they have shortened the time frame for these coaches? Do you think there's a benefit to letting a coach write it out for more years?
Well, I just think it depends on the eye test. Like Hackett deserved to be fired,
Yeah,
right? That was like we know that's over. Get rid of him. But if you look at other teams, I guess the one that he wasn't fired because he's an interim, but like Steve Wilkes, what he did there, they're like they should have
right.
given him another year. But I'm trying to think of this year because a lot of the coaches overachieved, like Dayball. I didn't think Dayball was going to get the Giants to the playoffs this year, but he did. Um, so I'm just trying to think of newer coaches that are on the hot seat besides, well,
Well,
Hackett.
let's take Bears coach for example. Let's say let's say he's 3 years in, right? So he's new coach this year, and let's say he goes maybe less than 500 for the next 3 years. Like, is this like what's the time frame now of firing coaches? Because I feel like years ago you used to have coaches that you went years like
Mhm.
having bad seasons.
I think nowadays it's 3 years. Look at the Jaguars, right? I know he's new, but they have the number one pick 2 years in a row. Peterson comes in, they make the playoffs and win a
Right.
game. Obviously, they're like, what's his name? Staley. He's getting a. I think it all depends on the owners too, and if they are cheap or not. Before the Bengals were good, Marvin Lewis was there forever, right? And he didn't do
Right.
much. It all depends on who your ownership is and how they care about the bottom line too. If they really care about winning too much. I look at the Raiders, and because McDaniels failed already once, I kind of feel like he's on a short leash because he failed once, right? Some of these newer guys, you might give a longer leash. Like Dan Campbell. Everyone was saying at the beginning of the year, oh, this is going to be Dan Campbell's last year.
Right.
And then now they're looking at like one of the best teams going forward.
Well, they almost make the playoffs. They got good draft picks. They're building from the bottom. But doesn't that make sense though to say uh, give a guy like Dan Campbell a chance, right? Yeah, you struggled a little bit, but I guess the question for me in my mind is why not put coaches on a guaranteed contract?
Right. They
Like,
do,
look,
aren't they?
you got well, not like they do, but like more of like not a money guarantee, but like a year. Like, look, here's 5 years.
Well, the problem is like we're gonna look at Hackett. That would have been horrendous.
But wouldn't they then try to get a better person than because I feel like they do it. They're like, if he doesn't work out, we'll just get rid of him.
Right.
Right. There's no incentive to like really focus on your coach. Like if you know you're gonna have this guy for 5 years, you're not gonna hire a guy like Hackett. I don't
Right.
think.
Well, they do have those kind of contracts because Gruden was 10 years, $100 million, right?
Right.
But the only reason they got out of it is because of the legalese. I think Peyton's got like a 5 year, 20 million a year contract or something crazy like that.
Yeah, but it's more about the money instead of like the guarantee of you're the coach. Because then they're like, well, we'll cut you after 2 years, but we're going to pay you the 100 million. Who cares? Because the people owning these teams are multi-billionaires, dude. They
Right.
don't
But
care
if I'm a
about this.
coach, I'd rather have that than spend like 5 miserable years at a place that I hate, right?
Yeah, but I don't think the coaches always hate it. I think they get, you know, a lot of them they're trying to build this program, and that it might take some time for that to happen.
Well, though, if you look at Kingsbury, right? The Cardinals, they gave him a contract extension. And then they're like, wait a minute, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. You
Right.
kind of suck. So you're out. I think it all just depends. I just feel like if nowadays with the draft and everything, if you go in like say the Bears, you're a coach of the Bears. This year was your mulligan because you knew you're going to be bad, right?
Right.
Next year you better win like 5-6 games at least, right? And then the year after that is the year you're supposed to make the playoffs.
Right. Right.
You have to look at the Jaguars or the Lions as your blueprint.
What you're saying is what your thought process is different because Hackett, for example, Denver expected him to be good
Yes.
versus where Eberflus, they're like in Chicago, they're like, we know you're going to be bad,
Right.
and we need you to continue to improve each year.
Right. Well, that's how, the Texans did the opposite. They just got 1 year coaches that they knew they could just fire because they knew they were going to be bad
Right.
for years. Um, the only
Well,
problem with that was the optics of hiring black coaches. Then it made it even worse because it looks like you're just. But then they
trying
gave.
to fulfill a quota.
Yeah.
So talk about the Texans for a second because I did want to talk about this was how good is it for the Texans right now? You know, um, to get uh
The Nico Ryans.
D'Amico Ryans as their coach. Like I don't see how the Texans can be any better shape going forward than to hire D'Amico Ryans, have these draft picks, all these draft picks coming forward. Like Texans are looking good right now.
Well, here's what I was thinking, and I don't know about you, but so I was thinking about this. I kind of think like they should go with Davis Mills another year and suck again, and then get
Wait for like Caleb Williams
or
or
Drake May.
Drake May. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Because if you could get with a number like this, might hurt you as Bears, but if let's say the Bears trade out to 4, and if
Yeah,
I'm the Texans, I'm like, Jalen Carter's there,
right. Yeah,
Will Anderson's there, start a centerpiece of my defense, and then with 12, you can get a corner or a tackle, and
or
set it up because
top
you're not
wide
going to be.
receiver. You can go Quentin Johnson or
Yeah. Well, I would, and then
Jackson.
that way, then you don't follow what happened with David Carr.
Right.
And you
Um,
actually, the next year, you draft the quarterback and you already have a foundation because they have 2
now
picks next year, too.
I was thinking the same thing for the Texans. I think the Texans are stupid to trade. I think Indianapolis is smart to trade up. I think the best thing right now is for Indianapolis to go for 1 and Bears to move back to 4 and take the opposite defensive player that's available, right?
Right.
Or even move back further so somebody else can get Stroud or a quarterback
Right.
and just go back to the Clemson dude. And because I don't think he's much worse, and you get a good
Right.
defense player, but what you really want to get is picks. Like the Bears need to get a lot of picks. But I think Texans would be smart to do exactly what you're saying. I don't think they should go for Stroud or um, what's his name from Alabama.
Levis
Yeah,
or Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. Yeah, I would rather. I think Caleb Williams is by far the best quarterback that you could get in right now in the NCAA. If
Mhm.
I'm looking at a quarterback, I'm looking at him. And yeah, you may have another down year, but D'Amico Ryan's going to build your defense, especially if you get him some young defensive players.
Mhm.
And then now, you go forward from there. So I don't think that, I think that's exactly what they should do. So I mean, we'll see what they do, but my thought process is that D'Amico Ryan's might feel that same way. Like, give me some defensive players right now. Let me start building this defense because the quarterbacks right now aren't any better or maybe worse than what you can get in the next couple of years.
Right.
So,
Especially they have the Browns pick and their pick next year
right.
also.
Which, looking at the Browns, that might be a really good pick.
Yeah. Or and if not, you know what? Then you still have 2 first-round picks that you can trade up to number 1 next year if they
Right.
need to get
Right.
Caleb Williams
And
or
if you
Drake
need,
May.
yeah, if you need to make that trade, you got the picks to do it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I think the Bears, honestly, their options are more limited now because it almost looks like Derek Carr may stay with the Raiders.
No, he's not. He no, that is burned. They're so dumb that he's just going to get released now, and they're not even going to trade him. It's ridiculous. They're not going to get anything for him, and it's their what they did was so dumb.
Right.
Yeah. So he's going to be a free agent, and he can pick and choose where he wants to go. Which I would think if I was him, I'd go somewhere in the NFC South.
Yeah, because they were talking about that because he can invoke his no trade clause
Right.
to not allow him to trade him. Then they have to pay him the $40 million
Or release him.
or release him. Right.
Yeah. By February 15th.
Right.
If they don't
Yeah.
trade him by February 15th, they have to release him.
Well, and then even if they try to trade him, he can say no.
Yes.
I'm putting my no trade clause in, which ESPN just reported it that he's like, that's what's best for me. So why wouldn't I do that? why
Right.
wouldn't I
Well,
invoke my no trade clause?
yeah. Well, he said a bunch of stuff that the problem was is they're not letting him or his aide, and this is what's stupid too. They're like, oh, they're not letting them seek out a trade because they're
Right.
like, well, he might just work out a backdoor deal for free agency. Well, what are you doing? He's just going to be a free agent anyway.
Right. At the end of the day, right. Because if he wants to be, he can. Because the way his contract structured, like he actually controls most of it.
But if he wants 40 million a year, he might want to get the trade going.
Right. Well, I mean, he's going to have, yeah, that's going to be ultimately, there has to be a team that wants him,
Right.
which that's what it comes down to for him. Uh,
I can think of all the NFC South, um, the Jets, the 49ers, um, yeah, the Commanders, the Colts,
the Colts.
the
I could see him going to the
Texans.
Colts. I think the Colts really want Levis though.
I hope so because I don't want the Raiders touching Levis.
I think the Colts are really, really going after Levis,
The
which
only
I don't think
way,
that's good for the Bears because I think the Colts are one of the teams that would really want to move up into that first position.
right, I'm telling you right now, if the Raiders don't get Stroud or Young, I don't know. That's and if it's like the one mock where they have a
Where
chance at
Stroud falls to seven.
yeah, they have a chance at Stroud and they take a tackle. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
because I'm
I
just
mean,
hoping they take Stroud and then McDaniels gets fired next year because I'm done with him.
yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, so Derek Carr won. D'Amico Ryans. I think that's what a great hire. Matt Ryan staying in the league. So Colts are gonna release him and he said he's gonna keep playing.
I don't know who's gonna want him.
Yeah, but I mean
I mean,
that's a
if you
great
look,
that's a great backup.
yeah, but if you look at the free agent quarterbacks, Carr is going to be the number one,
Right, right.
and then
No, yeah,
Garoppolo.
obviously.
Um,
Well, the Patriots are talking about Garoppolo.
I don't know. They got Mac Jones still, and
Yeah,
they brought in Bill O'Brien, who was the OC at Alabama when Mac Jones was there.
Belichick still loves Garoppolo because that was his guy.
Yeah,
I could see Garoppolo going to New England. I could see it because I don't trust Mac. Are you going to go for with Mac Jones?
I don't know. It's kind of hard with when you got Bill O'Brien going in there. Maybe I don't know if I'd at least wait until Mac Jones's contract is up before I would figure something else out.
I just don't think he has it.
I don't think so either, but he had no offensive coordinator this last year.
Yeah, but even his first year when they like thought he was the number one guy, I still wasn't impressed. Like I still
No.
didn't think that it was great. So, but it will be interesting to see where Garoppolo goes, and then Aaron Rodgers. So you've got that. Where is Aaron Rodgers going to go?
Did you see the rumors now? He supposedly bought a house near Devontae Adams in Nevada.
Right. I would not be surprised if obviously it looks like Carr is going. So you bring in Rodgers for what, a year or two?
But here's my thing. The reason why the Carr McDaniels ship didn't work is because Carr used, even though this is the crazy part, with Gruden, he had more leeway to make calls at the line. And I guess with McDaniels, they butted heads because
Right.
McDaniels didn't want him to think and just do what he thinks. Now you're going to bring Aaron Rodgers is going to listen to
You're
McDaniels.
right. No, he's going to do his own thing,
Yeah.
100%.
And that was the rumor was it was the Seahawks game against the Raiders that was the last straw. And the one was the winning play.
Right.
Carr checked out and gave that play to Jacobs. And you could see because Carr went down to the ground and he was all, and it's like, so McDaniel's hubris is so high that they win a game because your veteran quarterback makes a decision to change your play and you win a game. But
Right.
now I'm going to get rid of you because you, yeah. I can go
Yeah.
on
And
tangents.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a respect issue between McDaniels and Carr. And that dynamic may change when you bring in a guy like Rogers.
Right. But then what are you going to give up for Roger? I'm not giving up multiple first round picks for a guy
Yeah.
that's
No,
one
I
foot
think
out the
that's crazy.
door.
I think that's crazy.
Well, and especially, what they're going to want Waller too.
Right.
I'm not doing that because he's going to just be like, oh, I'll play one more year and then retire.
Well, I think that it's ridiculous what they think they can get for Rogers.
And because of his cap, the Raiders would be having to get rid of people to get him on that board.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
already
they
know
did raise the cap.
they already know that the Raiders defense is horrible. And the whole reason
Right.
you're getting rid of Carr is to help fix that defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Raiders, I think they, as much as they need a quarterback, they also need a lot of defense.
Yeah. They haven't
So
had a
that's
top 15 defense in over 20 years.
exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like at some point, you have to fix the defense. I mean, you're almost better off with a mediocre quarterback
Yeah.
and focusing on your defense. Because you got Jacobs, you got, Waller, you got Renfro, you got Adams. It doesn't take a
Well,
superstar to take advantage of that.
those bright, front office people didn't pick up Jacobs' fifth-year option, so he's a free agent.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, they're going to come back and try to pay him. That's for sure. But
that or
they
they got a
should have picked
franchise
up.
tag him.
They'll franchise tag him, guaranteed. Guaranteed. I don't think that's an option for them at this point. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff happening, and I think for me, this is one of the best off seasons. Of course, because the Bears have the number one pick and we get to see all the trades, but also there's a lot of dynamics, a lot of people moving around that that's not normal. High profile quarterbacks, uh, you know, people running out of cap, have to let people go. I mean, even you look at Saquon, he's shopping.
Yeah.
And that's a big like how many times do you get a running back like that shopping around?
Well, you have Daniel Jones, a free agent too, right?
Right. Well, they've already committed. I mean, obviously nothing's set in stone, but they've said like we're focusing on Jones. Where
Yeah, but they
Saquon's like, screw you guys then. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go check out other teams.
right. Well, and I've heard that the Chargers might release Khalil Mack and
Right. Mike Evans on the trade block. Uh DeAndre Hopkins.
yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a really fun year for moving people around. It'd be nice to see like some mix up, some of these players. We haven't seen that in a while.
Right. Both we didn't talk about the Sean Payton trade.
Well, I mean, I guess that's probably maybe the last point here. Sean Payton, it sounds like he's going to Denver.
No, it's already happened. They traded for
Right.
him.
That's what I mean. And so it's like it's kind of set in stone at this point, but not. I mean, nothing's never done until it's done. But doesn't this again, not a conspiracy theorist, but doesn't this almost fit the narrative that now Sean Payton will come in, and all of a sudden Russell Wilson will play good again, and Denver will be good again. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, look at Sean Payton, and look at this turnaround."
Yeah. I don't know though, with the Broncos, and we've seen it in years past, when you got a dominant defense, it doesn't last as many years as a dominant
Right.
offense. And so I think they've almost hit there. I mean, they traded Chubb. They still have Certain.
Yeah, defense is still solid.
Well, we'll see what it is like next year. Because sometimes they have a falling off. But
But there's nothing wrong with their offense.
well, there shouldn't be anything wrong with their
That's what I'm
offense,
saying.
but their offense has been horrendous.
If Russell Wilson plays like normal Russell Wilson, you have a good offense, especially with Patrick coming back. If you have Sutton, Patrick, and Judy all playing,
Yeah. And Hamler.
that's tough.
The only thing though is, and you say I hate him, but this year was an anomaly. He was bad. Russell Wilson was bad this year, but he hasn't been the same in like 3 years.
Right. But the script plays out that Sean Payton comes in, right? Russell Wilson comes back, and now you've got a good Broncos team, and it's like, oh my God, Sean Payton, he's the best.
No, the script will be Derek Carr goes to another team and they go and win the Super Bowl.
Right. So but I am interested to see how this plays out with Sean Payton, because I would like to see how he comes in and takes over a team who offensively struggling, franchise league struggling. Like, I think as far as Denver fans, I think this is as low as they've been on Denver in a long time.
Oh yeah,
Because Denver fans are super loyal.
Well, what was the one overtime game they
They just
started
left the
leading?
game. I don't think I've seen that from a Denver game in a long ass time.
I haven't seen that from many. If your team's in
Yeah.
overtime, they usually
But Denver is one of those, like, Denver fans go to the grave with Denver.
yeah.
And so that was I don't know that I've seen Denver fans as low as they are right now. And it kind of makes for a great Hollywood script for Sean Payton to come in, and then all of a sudden Denver plays great and they're back, and
Kevin James has another movie.
yeah, right. Uh it's kind of like, what's happening this year. It, yeah, it's hard not to like go with the conspiracy theorists sometimes.
Yeah, but here's one. How would be like a team like the Detroit Lions be like, yeah, we're good with all these scripts where we've never won a Super Bowl
Right.
in our
Right.
entire
They're
existence.
just buying into this. Like, we just get to suck all the time.
Yeah, and it's like the Chargers. Oh, we're gonna look like we're good on
Yeah.
paper, but then choke away games.
We're gonna choke all the time. But isn't that weird that they choke all the time? Like, come on, man. Like, how can you choke all the time?
Right.
At some point you gotta stop, right? At some point you gotta win. Uh I don't know. Regardless of everything that happened, I think it's a great NFL year. Not my two favorite teams to be in the Super Bowl, but is what it is. And I always love to watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Playoffs, I think, were nowhere near what they were last year.
No.
Um, there was only a handful of fun games to watch, which was unfortunate.
Right. There was a lot of
Um,
infuriating games in the playoffs
right.
too.
Yeah. But there was some cool things that happened. I think Miami playing Buffalo close, the Jags coming back on the Chargers, the Giants beating Minnesota.
The Bengals 99-yard fumble return.
Right. Yeah. And then the Bengals beating up on Buffalo was fun to watch.
Not for me, but
Well, I mean, because there are things that, like, it wasn't expected, but because there was nothing in the Buffalo Cincinnati game where I was like, oh my God, this is rigged, Like it was a game that you really watched a team outplay another team,
Right.
On both sides of the ball. Like there was no calls. You're like, oh my gosh, she missed this holding, it was blocking the back. It was, there was nothing like that. It was just a good game to watch. So there was some good games, but then there was some awful games.
Right.
Yeah, and there were some teams that, I mean, Dallas and Tampa Bay and
The Giants.
Chargers. God, Chargers is so horrible.
I love that game when you
Yeah.
talk.
No, I mean it was if you're not a Chargers fan, it's great, but at the same time, it's painful. It was painful to watch.
Also, should we talk about? I know we'll have our picks, but I pretty much have guaranteed another playoff championship here, right?
Oh yeah, because I went 0-2, lost both games.
Now, yeah, and I want to. So I think Wes might be 8-4, and I'm 9-3.
Right.
So
So
I guess,
Wes has to pick the opposite of you, and you guys can tie.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm out of it. Yeah, none of my teams went, but so I knew Philadelphia would probably win the game, but that was a heart pick,
we don't go
So
with our
it
hearts,
didn't.
Steve. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, but I already went 3-3 in the wild card, so I knew it was already over. uh, the playoffs this year, like I said, it just wasn't as fun as last year as far as the games.
There weren't any close. Last year was some crazy close
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
And then last year, remember, we were talking about the overtime rules. That was
right.
the big thing.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see uh,
Chiefs,
Kansas City and
Bengals in
the Bengals
overtime.
go to the overtime just to see how it played out, right? Just to see how the rules might have affected it. But of course, the refs had to stop that. They're like, no.
Well, though, it's true, though. That guy, you can't touch Mahomes that. No.
Yeah, yeah. I've always had a problem with that rule, but at the same time, like the rule's the rule. Like you can't
It was
change
like
it.
already like
But dude,
so
how do you
far out of
stop a
bounds.
300-pound dude?
But you don't do this, though,
Right,
then.
right, right, right. But that happens so fast. There's only like when you watch that in slow motion, it's different than real time. You know that, dude. Like
Yeah,
when
but you
you're
know
putting
where the
your hands
sideline
out,
is.
you're like on this side of the sideline, and then it happens on that side of the sideline. And it's all in the game. It's in the like it's just really hard. But at the same time, you have to call it. Of course you do. But people don't understand what it's like to play the game and to be in that situation. And you're like, I got to get this guy out of bounds. And you do it inbounds, but your hands aren't there till you guys are out of bounds, and then it
Right.
happens. So, um, but regardless, like, of course they have to call it. It sucks. You can't do anything about it. So, well, we'll wrap it up here. In Wes didn't show up, but he'll be on for Super Bowl. We'll be live for Super Bowl podcast. Can't wait for that. So we'll give you guys our Super Bowl picks live on Super Bowl day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on podcast, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Appreciate it. Any comments, questions, anything you want to see in the Super Bowl live podcast, let us know. And we will see you guys next time.
Put in your comments what kind of wings Steve should make.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we're gonna have wings and chili dogs.
Jenna dogs.
Chili dogs.